Oh, Jesus, we're still on fucking recording. All right,
Yeah,
everybody,
we're ready.
welcome back to.
Oh, my bad.
You're such an asshole.
I was letting you know we were
5 minutes last time.
I was letting you know we were starting a new recording. That way we're not eating up all the time. That's all right.
All right, well, since we already started it, hey, everybody, welcome to episode 46 of The Cup. Glad you haven't been put on a train car yet. Roger's ready for him to come and try and put him on with his I don't know, with his Durst, his daggers right here. He's running through. I don't know what he's doing. There's some LARPing going on at his house, in his neighborhood. I don't know. So hey, so we figured you guys were getting to the point. Luke's got some stolen Eastern European relic over here, some artifact he's going to try and smuggle back into the United States. I don't know what that is. I don't know. What are y'all, 5 years old? All right. Hey, so we're gonna get a special guest on here a little later. Dave. Just a quick, he'll get into it, but to let you know the significance of Dave. Dave is an admiral, right? So keeping in tradition with the guest on the cup, we are we don't go small potatoes. It's only big people, big important people on here, and to hold Roger to task, hopefully one day, maybe the next, I don't know, next episode and a couple of years, maybe Mike Huckabee. I don't know. We'll have to see.
I'm working it.
So, but until we get Dave. Dave lives out in Candelaria, Texas. If you don't know where that is, then you've obviously never seen The Highwaymen with Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson. Shame on you. But we're going to get Dave in here in a few minutes. But first, we're going to wrap up all the nonsense and the chaos that has occurred here over the last few days. Everything from, I don't know how Roger puts it. Private businesses doing what private businesses should be able to do. Some people think it's a violation of free speech. We'll see. Because we'll unpackage that for you. You've got three incredibly intelligent, dapper, dashing, intellectual, barrel-chested, steely-eyed killers here, and we're gonna get you educated on all this stuff. So I want to get Roger's take on Twitter specifically, but social media in general, banning and blocking, suspending the official president of the United States Twitter account. I want to get Roger's take on that. So I won't do like Roger does, where we throw it out there and then he won't turn it over to you for like 10 more minutes. So Roger, why don't you go ahead and give us a quick rundown and your thoughts.
So you missed the whole, when I do that, it's a tactic, right? It's to ask the question, and then it's to overload you with information in a short period of time, and then you're thrown off your game, because then you get caught up in all the I only have one question broken down into 42 parts type thing. So you're all focused on the 42 parts and you forget about the one question. So that's why I do that. When it comes to social media posts and banning, or big tech is what they're calling it, and banning President Trump, not a problem with it. Zero, none. Because you like to keep busting my balls on, well, it's private business. They do whatever they want to do. And this, you're missing the whole, key aspect of that. It's not that private businesses are being able to do what they want to do because they're private businesses. It's the fact that they are being protected by Section 230. You continue to forget that, because in a normal capitalist society, and I know Luke called me an anarcho-capitalist, but if you were truly a private company that was operating without the protections of Section 230, they could ban Trump all they wanted, and Trump could take recourse, right? He could turn around and sue him, which, by the way, I think Amazon's being sued. Amazon's being sued right now by Parler. So that's the problem, is that Section 230 and I don't know how much this delves into that, because as far as actually banning somebody versus protecting the content that's on there and not being liable for the content, I don't know how much of that bleed over there is. But that's really part of the problem there, is that there's no recourse. And without certain protections, without government protections, then the individual has the ability to sue. You can file a lawsuit and this and that, much like Parler is doing with Amazon. Hey, you're in breach of contract, this and that. We're suing you, and we want to be back on your web server or whatever. So, it goes back to private businesses, because I definitely don't want the government to dictate how private businesses operate. At the same time, when you look at a lot of those Section 230 protections and other government regulations, they're meant to level the playing field. They're meant so that all the companies operate and play on the same football field. But you do outgrow those, because a lot of times as a smaller company, if you're liable for everything, I mean, you'd just be out of business. But they do outgrow those. And I think when you look specifically with Facebook, and when you look at Twitter and even some of the other platforms, I mean, they've clearly outgrown the need for 230 protections. And I think Luke and I have talked about this in the past. Maybe the answer to some of that stuff, I mean, in my mind, the answer is just get rid of it, right? Which is not going to happen now, especially with a Democratic controlled Congress. But, and when I say get rid of it, I say get rid of the protections for Facebook and Twitter. There's no reason that Twitter or Facebook should have those type of protections right now. There's no reason for it. And I think even Amazon, the Third Circuit Court is already ruled against them previously, against their marketplace, basically saying that, well, no, you are liable for what you sell in your marketplace. So Amazon, because they host a lot in their web server, and they have the marketplace and audiobooks and this and that and music, a lot of their content and a lot of their platform does fall under those government protections. However, and I don't know how high this will go, but they have already been sued, and the Third Circuit Court has come back and said, yeah, your marketplace doesn't fall under that. You actually are liable for all that stuff. So, when it comes back to the private business, I guess my question, and we talked a little bit about it as far as market cap, but what's the answer to it? I mean, do we say, hey, you have these Section 230 protections until you become a certain size, Luke? Or just like, hey, the way it is right now, it's like, hey, if your platform meets the requirement for Section 230 protections, then you have them forever, no matter what your size is, or because clearly the way it's working right now, I mean, put it this way, we were chatting about this before our crappy platform went down. The Chinese government came out and accused Twitter and Facebook of violating free speech. Angela, is it Angela or Angela? Well, however the Germans say it, Merkel came out and basically said the same thing. So when you have a socialist and a communist coming out saying that you're violating free speech, guess what? You're probably violating free speech. That's what that would be my bet on that. So I don't know, Luke. What's your take on I know we've touched base on it several times with 230, but in your mind, what's the solution for that?
I don't know what the solution is. I think that we talk about it quite a bit offline. I think we've talked about it on this show quite a bit, but Roger's bringing me around on the market share portion of it. Had an interesting conversation today about, right wing versus left wing versus fascist versus communist. What is Trump? What is Joe Biden? What will Joe Biden be? And I think we all agreed that Joe Biden is not a communist. I wouldn't even call him far left. He's not a fascist, but if you look at some of the 230 protections and the fallout from those, that's fascistic type tactics. So I invented a new term for what I think our government is slowly turning into. You've got communist, you've got socialist, you've got democracy, republic, oligarchy, technocracy, stuff like that. So I came up with this new term. I'm very proud of myself for this. I really think, and you heard it here on the cut first, I really think that our government is turning toward a woke corporatist authoritarianism. And that ties into the whole Section 230 and the protections, the 230 protections. Now that Democrats control, they did the hat trick, man. They got the House, the Senate, and the presidency. For the next 2 years, you're not going to see those protections go away. I mean, in the Biden transition team, there are numerous big tech folks on that transition team putting people in the right places, already starting to write the laws and talk to representatives and senators and say, okay, what are we going to go after, stuff like that. So I don't know what exactly the solution is, Roger. I buy into the market share piece, but I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'd have to really dig into it and say, okay, this is Luke's solution for how it should be. It's a lot like the it's a lot like the Second Amendment argument with me. I know something's wrong, but you guys are like, well, fix it, Luke. And I'm like, well, I know something's wrong. I don't know how to fix it. It's like I'm driving down the highway and my car breaks down. I mean, I don't know how to fix it. But, if it's complicated, I don't. So, but all this goes back to, I told a bunch of people, a handful of people that, man, wait till you hear this episode, And it's episode 46 that we actually recorded last week. And in an effort to be fair and transparent with the audience, I think the three of us were still a little raw after the incidents of January 6th at the Capitol. And, the incidents of January 6th translated to the President Trump's Twitter account being taken off. Now, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that the official POTUS Twitter was not taken off, but Donald Trump's was. Now, I don't know. You can correct me on that when I kick it to you. But maybe we can send it around again. Josh, you could give us your thoughts on the social media thing, and then maybe on the protests and what happened at the Capitol building as well. Maybe we can all try to be a little calm, and collected, and Roger won't have to do so many qualifiers on my speech. Thanks for doing that last week, even though we didn't publish, because Roger really had to reel me in particular. He said, well, what Luke meant by that, and he was right. It is what I meant. But if you would have left my words alone, it wouldn't have sounded good. And Roger clarified it. Maybe he'll do that again. So we're going to give you a quick rundown of what we thought about the Capitol. I know a lot of you people are looking forward to hearing our views on that. So we'll give it a quick one, but I'll tell you, it's still a little raw with me, and I'm still honestly kind of trying to get my bearings on the whole thing. So Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, that was that was a pretty good vent session. So on the on the social media, banning, I believe, and so Luke, I believe you're correct. I believe I misspoke. I don't think it was the official POTUS that got the hack, got the ban. I think it was Donald Trump's personal account. I'll have to go back and relook that, but I think you are correct. I can't recall anything that the government has put their hands in that they did not screw up, that they did not make worse by simply being present. I can't think of anything. But at the same time, I'm not what'd you call Roger? An anarcho-capitalist?
Anarcho-capitalist. Yeah, that was Luke's term for me, which I think I do fall in that category.
Right. So at the same time, we can't. I don't necessarily believe in anarcho-capitalism. Right. It's a fine line. It is truly a fine line with me, and I honestly, I'm still trying to figure out where that is. I'm still trying to learn, right? Because again, I dislike government in private businesses. I just what really gets me about it is, I don't know. We talked about it before. Is the whole hypocrisy thing on private businesses? Now all of a sudden the left are, well, it's a private business, they can do what they want. Well, okay. Well, why can't they open? Why can't private businesses open up? If they can do what they want, why can't they open up? I remember a case from a couple of years ago, went all the way to the Supreme Court. The left destroyed a business, drugged the business owners through the mud because they didn't want to make a cake for somebody because they didn't believe in their lifestyle from a religious standpoint. That private business wasn't allowed to do what it wanted. So all of a sudden now private businesses can do what they want simply because it fits their narrative, right? And that's separate. I think that's that's separate from should government be involved, as far as like social media. The thing with the social media, I look at it's a little different because to me, social media and Luke, we had this, we all three had this conversation offline. Is social media is the new town, like it is the new town square. It's I think Luke called it the Ma Bell on steroids and meth, right? That's what social media is now. And so people who are fine with private businesses doing what they want, okay, well, I think that's something that we need to dig a little deeper into, because I'll go back to my slippery slope, which some of you out there will call a logical fallacy, and Luke has educated you on logical fallacies and what they are and what they aren't. So I'll ask you this, and not just the general audience, but Roger, I want to get your thoughts. Let's say Verizon and AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, all the major service providers for cell phones. If I don't like what you're saying on that phone, I don't agree with you politically. Can I turn your phone off? Can I do that? Right? If I'm Amazon Web Services and I don't agree with your content, which they banned, so Amazon Web Services dropped a group today, a pro Second Amendment gun group. They stopped supporting them today. They dropped them from Amazon Web Services. So where does this go, right? So I'm telling you where this is going, and people think I'm crazy, but I'm not. We are going to enter into a parallel economy. We're going to have parallel economies. We're going to have parallel lives. We're going to have parallel, everything. And that only leads to one place. When people start fighting for resources, we all know where that leads. That eventually leads to kinetic conflict. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see kinetic conflict, but that's what's going to happen. That is where this leads. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be positive. And Luke, absolutely spot on. This shit is not getting fixed in the next 4 years. The 230 protections, if anything, they're doubling down. They are going to double down and protect Twitter and Facebook and these conservatives. You have to, even if you're of the party of the thought process that Trump did incite violence at the Capitol with his speech. I don't think he did, but if you are, then you have to ask yourself, why does the Ayatollah still have a Twitter account? Why does Z have a Twitter account? Right? Why? Why do some of the left have a Twitter account who literally have tweeted, we are going to put conservatives on trains. They should not be doctors. They should not be police officers. They should not be teachers. You've got Alec Baldwin saying that Ted Cruz should be physically dragged into the National Mall and tarred and feathered. So that's, to me, that right there is inciting violence. When you say people should go physically assault somebody and drag them into, the National Mall to be tarred and feathered, that's inciting violence. When Maxine Waters tweets, go get in their faces, that is inciting violence. Why do they still have Twitter accounts and Donald Trump doesn't, right? I heard they turned his back on, but this is going nowhere good. Luke's got something to add real quick.
I didn't say real quick, but no, I didn't say real quick, but I just want to have a point to kind of kick back to Roger with respect to the publishing, and this is not an argumentative point. This is just something to consider when we're talking about 230 protections. And I just want to hear what you have to think about this. Now, one of the reasons Parler was removed from Amazon, the Amazon servers, and now you can't access Parler, was they said that people were organizing. One of the reasons was they were organizing for that protest. Also, they were saying, crazy stuff I'm not going to repeat on this podcast. They were saying some pretty crazy things. So they saw those and they removed them. So Parler, Amazon was demanding that they moderate their content. Now let's look at Twitter. Twitter kind of, if you really delve deep into Twitter, you'll see that Antifa uses Twitter to organize and encourage violent protests or vandalism, destruction of property. They over and over they've used this. Now here's the difference. Here's what I think Roger and I want, and Josh too. You cannot use, Antifa cannot go to the New York Times and buy space to do those very things, which is organize or encourage violent protests, vandalism, destruction of property. They cannot do that. The publisher's liable for that, so they don't let them. They moderate that content because they have to. Now, I know it's a big problem for Twitter, Facebook, and all of these social to try to moderate, but I mean, hey man, you're a publisher, straight up. Once you start moderating content, you're a publisher. So, and breaking it down like Josh did with Ma Bell, cutting off the phone call because they don't like the fact that you're talking about the competition even, or they don't like the subject matter you're talking about in the woke corporatist authoritarianism dystopia that we now live in. It's the same type of thing that we're talking about. So I'm with Roger. Take away the protections, make them sort it out themselves. And I am absolutely with Roger when I say the market, once those are taken away, will definitely start sorting itself out. And I think market share is a part of that, Roger. I really do, because whatever. Go ahead.
No, and that's you're absolutely right. I mean, and that's my whole point with all of this stuff is even with private companies, a company I'm involved with, we can only operate within certain limits of the laws, because if we violate somebody's rights, if we violate the laws or whatever, we can be sued. And so that keeps you, I mean, obviously you should have morals and ethics that prevent all that or whatever anyway, but we can be sued. And that's part of the problem is you're giving Facebook and Twitter carte blanche to operate however they want to without being sued. They're not liable for anything they put on there. And I think when we had this episode earlier, I don't even know where this goes, because the reality is when you remove the 230 protections and you make them liable for things they publish, they're going to censor even more. They're going to have to, because they'll be sued out of existence. So I don't even know that, we say that's a solution. It is in the capitalist mind frame, but I don't know if that really solves the problem. And this kind of goes back to, I want to dovetail this back to the 6th January events, because this is where a lot of this came from, right? We had the protests downtown DC. And it was tens of thousands of people were there. I don't think I got an actual final number on how many people were there, but it looked like tens of thousands of people were there. And then obviously a handful or group of rioters broke through the barricades. Well, I'll use that term broke through the barricades very loosely, because I've watched the video and I shared the video with you two, and it looks like they were actually let through the barricades. And then, as these rioters made their way into the Capitol building, they, stole some stuff, took Pelosi's laptop, took her gavel, whatever it was. And then there were even pictures and stuff like that where they're taking selfies with the police officers and this. So I think there's be more that comes out of all this, but the left wants to wrap all this up. And I think for our listeners out there, you've seen this on the mainstream media over the past week, where they try to wrap all this up in a nice, neat little package. And every headline that I've seen, even, with right-leaning news sources or news sites, they've all said Trump protesters stormed the Capitol. Trump supporters stormed the Capitol. And I think by now you've seen that, were there some Trump supporters that stormed the Capitol that breached the, the barricade and this and that? Probably. I mean, I think there's probably a 99% chance that you had one or two, or more than that, but at least one or two Trump supporters that were there. The guy that they took the picture of that's got the swastika on his, or not the swastika, but the hammer and sickle on his hand, I'm not really sure that he was a Trump supporter. The other guy, forget his name off the top of my head, Angeli. I mean, he's a QAnon advocate, so maybe he is a Trump supporter, maybe he isn't. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell on what side of the aisle that they fall on all the time, but they make it sound like President Trump was the one that got up there and said, okay, we need 100,000 people to go overthrow the Senate and overthrow the House of Representatives. Let's overthrow Congress and this, that. One, I don't think either one of those two cats that they show in the news, which I think the three major ones they've arrested by now. I think they've arrested all three of them, as well as some of the others. But I don't think that was an attempt to overthrow the U.S. government. If it was very sad. I don't think the QAnon dude and the guy with the hammer and sickle tattooed on his hand, I don't think they were there to overthrow Congress. Luke said this, previously before, that sometimes people are just there because, like, hey, I get to be on TV. It's a riot. It's national news, this and that. And some people are there because they want to make a statement. And this kind of goes back to my bigger picture with this thing. I got a couple pieces I'll mention before I throw it back over to Josh. But one, I don't advocate for the violence. Very seldomly do I advocate for violence. Is there a time for violence? Absolutely. It goes back to the conversations that we've had about people. Man, I just wish they would read a history book. Read a history book about, how we became to be. And I'm not saying that we got to go break out the AR-15s and this and that, but generally speaking, I don't advocate for violence. I think there are better ways to get your point across, which unfortunately a lot of folks don't do that. But I don't think that there was an attempt to overthrow the government. And here's one major point I want to make. Politicians are not the government. Okay, there is a difference between attempting to overthrow the government and politicians. Because you can actually say that every campaign that's out there, every election that's out there is some type of protest against a politician, right? That's what the other side does. They state their case and they protest against that politician. Because, I never swore an oath or allegiance to a politician. I swore oath and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States. And I think when you look at folks that think, oh, they tried to overthrow the government. Nobody was trying to overthrow the government. Nobody was trying to overthrow the Constitution. Nobody was like, hey, we need to rip the Constitution up and chuck it out the window. Hey, let's go ahead and just burn up the Declaration of Independence. They were protesting against politicians. There is a big difference. And what the politicians, left and right, want you to believe is that they are the government. Okay, they want you to believe that they are the government, and they will create the laws to say that whatever action you take against them is illegal, to protect their own power. All right, to protect their own self-interest. So from that aspect, to try to lump us all into this, trying to, we were advocating for the overthrow and the government, this and that, it's night and day, and they refuse to see that line. There's a very defined distinction between the two. The other thing, and this is really, I think, to the root of a lot of this, people are tired, man, because here's what's going to happen come January 20th. January 20th, the inauguration is going to happen. Biden's going to take office as the president of the United States. And the reality is Trump won't be in office anymore. So what is the left going to do when Trump's not in office anymore? Because what they're going to find out is that it was never about President Trump. Okay, it's about the issues that he brought up. It's about the freedoms that he has said, hey, Americans, you got to fight for these things, right? Standing up for a lot of the folks. And I tell you, for those of you out here that think that we're crazy, like, you're just off your rocker and this and that. And I've said it before, and we've had this conversation several times. So here's what's happened in the last year, and it's been more extreme depending on where you're at. If you're in California, if you're in Maryland, if you're in Wisconsin, if you're in Washington, okay, the government has told you what you can wear. Right? They've told you where you can go. They've told you what you can buy wherever it is they allow you to go. They've told you who you can be with, whose house you can go to, who can come to your house. They've told you what time you can get up in the morning and leave your house. They've told you if you can or cannot go to work. And then they've told you what time you have to be back in your home. Right? So they have basically said, and let me break this down to you for those that don't get it, right? It might be a little bit thick. You want to go somewhere, what do you got to wear? Got to wear a mask, right? Hey, if you don't wear a mask, you can't come in here. And when this thing first kicked off, you heard a lot of ADA, because some people have some handicaps out there and disabilities that they can't wear a mask and this and that. And at the beginning, there were some exceptions to all that. Now they just done away with it, man. Hey, man, if there's no mask, you're not coming in here. And I think it's somewhere overseas where they were saying, I hope it was overseas. Hopefully it's not like New York or something like that. Hey, if you don't have a mask, you can't come in a grocery shop. You can't eat. Period. That's the reality of it. And, I think Luke's nodding his head. It might even be here in the States. They've said where you can shop. They've closed down some businesses. They've left some businesses open and said, oh, by the way, you as a small business, guess what? It's important that you close down. And, oh, by the way, these businesses over here arbitrarily can stay open. Oh, by the way, hey, go take a look at Michigan, right, where they were putting painter's tape over the seeds because, it was outlawed that you buy, heaven forbid, you bought seeds to go plant in your garden, that you might actually eat some food that the government didn't provide for you. right? They're telling what you can buy, where you can go. They've already placed curfews all over the place. So now the government's saying, hey, this is when you can leave. This is when we're going to allow you to leave your house. Oh, and by the way, you need to be in at 8 o'clock because that's when the COVID stops. So not only do we tell you when you can leave, now we're saying, well, now you have to be back home at a certain time. And oh yeah, I know it might be Christmas and it might be Thanksgiving. Here's who you're allowed to hang out with. And oh, by the way, I'm going to tell you who you're allowed to hang out with while I'm at my resort property in Cabo. Right? The hypocrisy just doesn't stop. So I think, when you look at what happened with the protests, when you look at what happened with the folks that breached the Capitol building, and again, there's a distinction between the two, because now you've already heard the left lump into protests, hey, I hate to break this down to you, but protests are a constitutional right that's protected. And what they do is they're conflating the protests and the riots to make it sound like they're all bad. And that's not the case. You had a handful that did some stupid ass shit, right? That I don't necessarily agree with the way they did it, but let's not lump them all into the tens of thousands of people out there, because what the left wants to make you believe is that all Trump supporters are bad. All 75 million Trump voters are bad. And you're starting to see that play out with, going back to Josh's point, with the social media bans and the Amazons. And I tell you, it gets very dicey because you can sit there and splice the law left and right. And what about this? And what about that? But it's a very dangerous time to be in when you have, whether it's private companies, it's not necessarily just a private company, but when private companies band together to sit there and silence folks. Because it's getting to the point where, and maybe this is part of the answer, I didn't really care for Josh's question about the, the telecom, this and that, because it's critical infrastructure and you get into privacy laws and this and that. But maybe that is part of the answer with a lot of that stuff is, hey, maybe you start looking at social media platforms and say, well, yeah, this is critical infrastructure. I mean, maybe there's some additional designations that you have to have there to ensure, because when you have a group of, it's different if it's one company that does this, right? That says, hey, we're just kicking you off our platform. But then when you have 3 or 4 of the major companies that control probably 99.9% of the market share, collude to do that. Collusion, you like that term, right? We've heard that a couple of times over the last 4 years. But when you have 3 or 4 of your major companies that do that, and oh, by the way, Amazon with AWS, that probably has 99% of that backbone, I would assume. If not, it's a pretty good damn majority, decide that, hey, by the way, you're not allowed to put your content out there not using our stuff. That's a problem. And it's going to lead, to that slippery slope. It's going to come down to, hey, man, and we're already seeing it. If you're conservative or you have a conservative mindset, you're not really going to have a voice out there. And that's why I hope, and it won't happen in the next 4 years, but when you look at those Section 230 protections, they do need to be revised, and there needs to be some protections that are taking away for some of these larger companies, because that's the only way that's going to work itself out, as far as when you've got your Gabs and you've got your Parlors and this and that are trying to compete in the marketplace and they're just not able to. So that's my thought in a nutshell, Josh. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's what I got.
Yeah, you answered my question, and you deviated from Luke's outline once again that Luke spent a lot of time putting together. So just hey, while Roger was talking, so we had our guest that we told you we were going to have on today. We got him in. So real quick, quick intro on Dave. First, his mustache is amazing. Right, that's that's a very, very Texan mustache there, Luke. I'm sure you making Luke proud as a fellow Texan. So everybody, Dave again. Just a few things. Intro Dave, and then Dave can say whatever he wants to about himself. One, I've known Dave for I'm not very good at math, for I think 22 years now, 23 years. So Dave and I first met when brand new. I watched him pin on his sergeant stripes, Dave, and Dave's first soldier, that he was in charge of as a non-commissioned officer in the United States Army, I believe, was young PV2 Josh. So I'm not quite sure why Dave still talks to me. And why Dave actually let me come stay at his house for a week and eat his food and kill animals in his yard. But that's how far Dave and I go back. I consider him one of my friends, and Dave's he's a patriot. I would say he's a Patriot simply because he's Texan, but we're going to discuss Dan Crenshaw a little later. And so we can't automatically say all Texans are Patriots because Dan Crenshaw is a Texan, and Dan Crenshaw has proven himself not to be a Patriot here recently. So what I want to do now is I want to give it over to Dave. Whatever you want to say about yourself, and kind of your thoughts, because I know you got some pretty animated thoughts on what's happened here in the last few weeks or maybe the last 4 years, and I don't know, Dave. So real quick before I do that, I'm going to pull a Roger on you. I don't know. Do you want us to refer to you as Admiral Dave or what? Because Dave is actually Dave is an admiral. He is an admiral in the I believe it's the Texas Navy. I didn't know Texas had their own navy, but I found that out. So I'm going to turn it over to Admiral Dave, and he'll let us know what he wants to be referred to here and after.
Well, you kind of put me in a bad position there. I mean, titles are important, I guess. I mean, so many of them, right? Dave would probably be just fine. Admiral seems very formal.
Yeah, we are not formal here.
No, and I didn't bring scotch. I only brought Kentucky rye.
Very nice.
That's some good stuff.
So funny story, I never been in my laundry room before, ever. And the one time I happened to go in there, there was just a bottle of this Kentucky Owl in the laundry room. Very strange.
The story behind that real quick is so I went out to beginning of December. I went and spent a week out at Dave's place in Candelaria, Texas, near a dry wash where a bunch of bandits were killed, and I don't know what the dollar, bought a large box of a number of bottles out to Dave's house. So I don't know, hypothetically, transporting that much booze across state lines. I don't know if that's legal or not. I don't care. Dave really, really enjoyed the Kentucky Owl. So I left it in the laundry room when I left because I knew if I tried to give it to him, he wouldn't take it. So I just left it. And after I left, I shot him a text and was like, hey, you need to go in your laundry room and check it out.
You might want to make sure the cap is still sealed before you crack it open, because knowing Josh, it's probably filled with Jim Beam or something like that.
I watched him open it. I think we're okay. Hey, so let's talk about Crenshaw, since you brought it up. And kind of to give a quick background, I grew up in Spring, Texas, which is a suburb north of Houston, and it happens to be Dan Crenshaw's district. So pretty much everything about Crenshaw I hate, like even before politics. And the reason why is because he left the military as an 05. So, I mean, generally 05s are at least the second most hated rank in the military. So that's strike one. Navy SEAL. All right, that's dubious at best. And then he grew up kind of in Katy, Texas, which is on the west side of Houston, which, 30 years ago was mostly rice fields and there wasn't very much there. So I kind of had better expectations, somebody that grew up in that kind of environment. But then come to find out, he wasn't born in Texas, so like me, he's not a real Texan. That's another strike. But then he didn't really grow up in Katy either, because his dad worked for Shell or somebody, and I think he spent most of his formative years really in South America. So to say that the guy's a Texan, I think is kind of a stretch. He doesn't really meet any of the major criteria. So I just figured I'd bring that up as sort of a starting point if we're going to talk about Dan Crenshaw in Texas in the same breath.
I'm with you on that. He didn't even go to college in Texas, I don't think, but I'm with you 100% with the Katy, the spring thing. In his district up there, I'm sure that's been redrawn over the years, but it looks like one of two things. When they talk about gerrymandering, they're talking about Crenshaw's district, which we can cover that on another episode. But it kind of looks like Japan turned on its side the other way with Iowa right on its head, or it looks like a dude with a big head squatting down on a pot and taking a dump. Look it up. Look up his district map, because that's what it looks like. Now, there were a couple of reasons that Josh and I kind of got on the Dan Crenshaw hate wagon. You know, I'm with you. I'm with you, Dave. He's
Luke,
the Navy
before you
SEAL
go there,
thing.
though, there's one other thing. He went to Harvard. You mentioned
That's
college.
right.
He didn't go to school in Texas. He went to Harvard. So that's
Right.
like strike 6.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So, I'm going to try to keep it focused here, talking about Crenshaw. I think he made one post real early on that was real. It was right after the election, Josh. Maybe you can remember it better than I can. But the dude, I mean, it was 2 separate sentences saying the exact opposite thing. It's like, hey, if there was election fraud, we need to get to the bottom of it. And number 2 was, hey, Donald Trump lost, deal with it. And it's like, dude, who are you talking to right now? But I think the real problem with me started not just with the wishy-washiness, but with his whole stance on the giant porculus bill and the COVID stimulus. I posted something on Twitter, or he posted to Twitter, trying to figure out how anyone justifies payments to over 100 million people who have not lost their job. Focus our taxpayer dollar funded relief on the unemployed and those with their hours cut, not the fully employed just working from home all year. Now that sounds great, but he wrote that after he had already signed this major spending bill, which he knew that COVID nonsense and all the other stuff was going to go on to it. So he's playing politician. And I messaged, I'm going to leave his conversation and Josh's conversation to him, but I tweeted back at him. I said, knowing this would be the case and congressional leaders, quote unquote, would attach $900 billion, the official record shows Crenshaw voted yay on both resolutions, 107 and 110. If I get $600, I'm donating to whichever Republican is running against this empty suit in his district. I mean, this guy I think Josh said it, he's the Mitt Romney of Texas. He is absolutely the Mitt Romney of Texas. And, like Dave outlined, calling him a Texan is dubious at best. And I'm sure we're going to have way more takedowns than this. I'm going to kick it to Josh, so maybe he can tell us a little bit about his conversation with the Honorable Dan Crenshaw.
Right. So it was around that time, right after the election, he tweeted out or posted, it was like, hey, election fraud, we can't have that. We have to have free and fair elections. We need to get to the bottom of it. Congratulations, Joe Biden, on winning the election. You're like, dude, what are you doing? Right. I'm all for, if Joe Biden wins fair and square, Joe Biden wins fair and square. That, I don't like it, but at the end of the day, I can accept that. I can accept somebody winning an election fair and square. And I think most of us can, right? It doesn't make it any better. But I'll accept it, a lot better than there was a lot of irregularities and, zero investigation. So then we get to, what Lou talked about, that COVID, that last stimulus bill, 107 and 110. And he posted on his Facebook page, he was like, it's 5,000 something pages. It was given to us hours before, the vote. We didn't have time to figure out what was in it. We didn't have time to, really dig into it and everything. And he voted yes on both resolutions. And so I commented on his page, on his Facebook page, on that post. I said, well, then you are now the swamp. If you didn't have time to read it, if you don't know what's in the bill, why did you vote yes for it on both resolutions, 107 and 110? Why did you vote yes if you don't know what's in there? Because we all remember, the ACA and, Pelosi. Well, we have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. No, you don't. That's not how any of this works. Jefferson would burn this place. Jefferson would burn it down. Like, Jefferson would come in and be like, he would look at us and be like, you had one job and you screwed it all up. And he would just be like, you know what, we're going to have to burn this thing in place and start over again because you children don't know what you're doing. And so Dan Crenshaw, or somebody who runs his social media accounts for him, responded back to me. Yeah, I basically called him. I was like, you're an empty suit. You are now the swamp. You're no better than Pelosi. You're no better than anybody else, any other career politician. And so it responded back to me with it was a very canned response, right? It was like, you've been lied to, right? It didn't tell me, it didn't even start out with like, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about, right? Which what any one of the four of us would automatically say, right? It would be like, you've been lied to, you've been misled. And it went on to this, this is that, and this, we have to get the money out to people who are struggling. And, but it was like, stop. You've been lied, Luke just posted out, quote, you've been lied to about the bill. Activists misunderstood some very important things and whipped everyone into a frenzy. You probably think there's a foreign operations money in the COVID relief bill. That's literally what they replied back with. It was like, well, there is. But we literally gave Pakistan, I forget how many millions of dollars for gender studies. Let me tell you about gender studies in that part of the world. Let me tell you how they look at the different genders in that part of the world, right? You're not going to change that with, 10 million bucks. You're not. That's going to go to the ISI and going to be used to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan. So it was something else. I look at Dan Crenshaw now, and I'm okay with if he took a stance on something that I don't agree with, then that's fine. I can at least respect that, right? To take a stance, and we'll debate it. But just he's a fence straddler. He's playing both sides. He's the swamp. And then his Second Amendment stuff. I know Dave wants to. He's got some things to say about that, but I want to see what Roger has to say about Crenshaw, and then we can get Dave's. I know Dave's pretty passionate about the Second Amendment stuff, as we all are, and I definitely want to get his take on Crenshaw's actions, not what Crenshaw says, because Crenshaw, what he says and his actions are two separate. And that's another thing that absolutely drives me nuts. At least the terrorists, at least ISIS, I can respect them because their actions reflect what they say. They say they want to kill me and they try and kill me. I can respect that. Crenshaw, no. Crenshaw's going to tell you one thing and he's going to piss down your back and tell you it's raining. I can't respect that. So, Roger, what are your thoughts on? Well,
no, you're spot on. I can deal with the Pelosi's and the Schumers of the world because I know what side of the aisle they're on. And I know exactly what to expect for them. And so when you plan out and you vote and you strategize and this and that, I know what side they're going to be fighting on. When you look at your rhinos and in particular with Dan Crenshaw, those are folks that you expect to have support. And then all of a sudden when they pull it from you last second or last minute, you're like, hey, what the hell? Well, what just happened here? And my major issue with Dan Crenshaw, a couple of them, and I'll leave the last one so I can segue back into Dave with the Second Amendment. But first of all, and Dan Crenshaw isn't the only one that's guilty for this. Now, one, let me caveat this. It's not because they vote against Trump. If you believe 100% of everything that your preferred politician says or does, you're not in a political party, you're in a cult. Okay, that's what that is. So I know that there are going to be some disagreements, and what I expect, I'm sitting here looking at the canned answer that he sent back, because we're just too stupid and we don't understand. That's basically what they said. What Crenshaw's party said was, you're just too stupid and you don't really know what's going on, so this is why we did what we did. But we're really not going to tell you why we did that. You're just too dumb to understand that. So I have a problem with that. But it's like, hey, take a stance and then come out and be like, this is why I voted for this, or this is why I voted against it. The problem is he is the problem with like the mainstream media. They sit there on one hand with the Twitter and the Facebook. Oh, this is BS. How are we supposed to read this and that, and yada, yada, yada. But then when you go look at the voting record, well, hey, Dan, how come you voted for it? You voted for it twice. Because he knows that the common person and that the media or that your common voter out here is not going to see that. That's all going to get washed over. It's going to be, hey, everybody, because I guarantee more people read his tweets than read the actual bill. Okay, so he can sit there and vote whatever way he wants on the bill, but then just come out and tweet the exact opposite, and people are going to take that at face value. The other issue that I have with him is that him, along with a lot of other Republicans, you guys and gals sat there and rode President Trump's coattails for the last 4 years. And then when the rubber met the road and it didn't necessarily meet your interest, you said F it and you bailed. And I tell you, when I look at his vote, when I look at his voting, one with the extension of the CARES Act or whatever they called that, I look at the voting for the National Defense Authorization Act. He also voted for the veto of that. And then more importantly to me, and this kind of gets into the weeds, but objecting to the Pennsylvania's presidential electors and objecting to the Arizona's presidential electors, he voted no on both of those. Now, I'm from Arizona, and I could tell you that with Arizona, okay, that was a little bit of a stretch, I think, because I think generally speaking, it was probably about as fair as you could have it. But when you look at Pennsylvania, there was no way in my mind that that's even legal, because long story short, we've talked about it before, so I'm not going to bore everybody with it, but long story short, Pennsylvania law says, hey, votes have to be in by this day and they got to be counted, period. And I forget what it is. I think it's like 3 days or 72 hours or something like that. They say it's got to be in by this and that. It's got to be counted, absentee ballots, mail-in ballots, everything. Well, then a judge, I think it was the state Supreme Court, right? I think the judge came back and said, no, we're going to extend that. It's like, well, no, you can't. Like, actual state law says this is the date. So you had an activist judge that came and said, no, we're going to go extend that. And they extended it for, I think at first it was another 3 days. And I think it was like 10 days after that. So I think it ended up being like 10 days where they could receive votes and still be counted. And then it was, well, you know what? It's supposed to be postmarked. Well, if it's not postmarked, you just have to assume that it's postmarked by that date. And you just need to go ahead and count that vote. And I don't think it's made its way through the U.S. Supreme Court, and they probably won't hear it. Well, maybe now they don't ever hear it. But I can't wrap my head around, one, why Crenshaw would sit there and object to that as far as that vote. And I don't even understand how that's even legal. And I don't understand how the Supreme Court's not taking that stuff up. So that's my other piece with Dan Crenshaw. In my opinion, he's another rhino. He's going to tell you to do. He's going to tell you, your typical conservative line, but knowing that you're not going to fact check it, and knowing that most of the voters aren't going to sit there and take a look at it, he'll just put out a couple of tweets and then say, "Well, no, I didn't vote that way." And you know what? I mean, the fact is, why not do that? Because nobody's ever going to call you out on it. I mean, the media is not going to call them out on it. Hell, they didn't even fact check their own shit. This is what he tweeted. That's funny because I'm looking at his voting record and that's not what he voted on. Now, if he would have come out and said, I'm voting for the National Defense Authorization Act because of our troops need to be paid and we can't, I can understand that stuff. We can't suffer a break in payment, and we've got folks that are deployed overseas, and we've heard that before. And same thing with the CARES Act, like doing, with the stimulus. One, he voted against the stimulus, but it's like, if you can sit there and say, well, hey, this is why I'm voting for it or why I'm voting against it, and at least articulate that to us, like, just assume we're not all idiots. I can live with that. But it's just this do one thing and then come out and tweet something else. I'll throw it to Dave on this note. The final thing that kills me, and I'm not a Texan, I am an Arizonan. But, we pride ourselves in our gun laws out here as well, or lack thereof, which is even better. And when you look at his stance, especially being a Navy SEAL, when you look at his stance on the Second Amendment and the red flag laws, and the fact that he supported and advocated for the confiscation of weapons under those red flag laws, and being from Texas, I don't even know how that dude's still alive. And you know what? Here's the funny thing. So he does that, right? Because he's appeasing the crowd. He's appeasing the masses out there because, they say, especially from the left, Texas is the big battleground state, right? For gun rights. So he does that thinking, and we've talked about this before, you capitulate. Oh, I'm going to appease, whatever you need, whatever you want. And then they come back and say, by the way, Crenshaw's our number one target for gun control. So it's like, dude, I mean, you're not going to make the left happy. You're not going to make them happy with anything that you pass unless you become the left. And so basically, when you look at everything from, his voting record to the red flag laws, I mean, guys just all talk, man. It's like The Rock used to say, don't sing it, bring it. And I just don't see it that way. So, Dave, what are some of your thoughts on his Second Amendment stances, and where do you see that playing out down in Texas?
Well, so that was kind of what first brought Crenshaw to my radar, as far as, is this guy really on our side? Is he is he going to be principled the way that we think that he's going to be? Because really what it comes down to is principle. You don't have any credibility if you aren't principled in, walking your walk, that you talk the talk. And just to make a point, Arizona in a lot of ways, especially gun rights, is more like Texas than Texas. The image of Texas, it's oftentimes more Arizona really than Texas.
Sure.
I mean, it wasn't until the Colleen Luby's massacre that it was even considered to have a concealed carry law in Texas, let alone open carry. And of course, the big cities and everything, the public outcry, the reaction to that was, oh, there's going to be gunfights, there's going to be blood running through the streets, and it's going to be horrific, which of course is not the case, because prior to that, everybody in Texas was carrying guns anyway. So it wasn't really much of a change. But that's where I'm at with Crenshaw now. When he saw an opportunity to, hit the news cycle with the red flag laws, and said, well, maybe that's something we should look into. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because it's worth at least giving the public perception that you're going to entertain it as, something that might be reasonable under certain circumstances, but certainly not support it, because history shows that it's not an effective tool in curbing gun violence, but it's a very effective tool in confiscation and in kind of court proceedings where due process is a little bit on the light side. So I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, but that's where he hit my radar. And to talk about being principled, the guy that preceded Crenshaw was a guy named Ted Poe, and definitely worth looking into. He's got a very interesting history, but he was the rep for that district for, I think, 12 years. And the very first thing he did when he came to Congress, at least that I remember, was he held up a spending bill that was for foreign aid. It was a foreign aid package. And he started going down the list of all these countries that were given money to and the amounts, and highlighting the fact that the bill was going to be voted on as one entire package, yes or no. So there's never any discussion about, all right, we're giving Yemen money, yes or no. We're giving Pakistan money, yes or no. We're giving Lithuania money or whatever. And it was really kind of refreshing to see a politician question, the out of control spending, especially foreign aid spending, which I'm not against, if it serves our interests, but there's something like 193 countries in the world right now, and we're providing economic aid to like 190 of them. I mean, it's ludicrous. But before Ted Poe was the congressman representing that district, he was a judge in the Houston area. I think he was a district judge. And before that, he was a prosecutor. But during his time as a judge, he was known as a shaming judge, where, if you got a DUI and you killed some people, you're likely to be standing out front of that bar that you were drinking at that night with a sign that said, I got a DUI after I killed 2 people. And so he got a lot of negative publicity about that, just in general. Rich Galleria type, suburban Houston mommies get caught shoplifting, and he'd stick them in the Galleria with a sign, saying, I'm a shoplifter. Interesting guy. I met him before. He's great dude. But he ended up getting some type of cancer, which I can't remember. So that's why he left Congress. And I remember seeing the Crenshaw signs in folks' yards. And I'm like, who's this damn pirate running for Congress? Like, because it was just a guy's face in this kind of like Andy Warhol kind of print with the eye patch. I had no idea who he was, and I wasn't living in Texas at the time, so I kind of didn't care. Uh, but yeah, it wasn't until the red flag thing that I even really kind of, considered it, even though his district is where I went to high school and grew up. Another interesting thing about Crenshaw, his district, like Luke mentioned, just absolutely crazily gerrymandered. Um, and it used to be much larger, but now it's more concentrated just in the Houston area. And the reason being because the Houston population just exploded. So it's got this weird kind of octopusy crescent moon thing going around Houston, but it actually borders one of our other favorite politicians, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. So her district is just to the south. One of my personal favorites.
Luke described it. When Luke described it as like Japan like turned on, like that's exactly what it looks like.
Oh, it's insane.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And you have Sheila Jackson Lee. We could dedicate an entire episode to her nonsense. But you talk about the red flag laws with the Second Amendment, and so right. So we got an Arizonian. We have two Texans, and I'm a Floridian myself, right? And Florida.
Actually, Luke is a European right now.
with that sweater, yeah.
Wife, let me borrow it, man. Give me a break.
So I'm a Floridian, and so it's kind of like California. It's Florida's basically three separate states, all in one. North Florida, you can't be in southern Alabama or southern Georgia and North Florida and know where you're at because they all look exactly the same. People are like, oh, Florida, palm trees and beaches. Like, no, man, I'm from North Florida. We have pine trees and beaches and a lot of swamps. It's and there's a lot of trailer parks and pickup trucks. So that's North Florida. Central Florida, it's kind of like that's God's waiting room, really. And then you have South Florida, you think of South Florida as like Miami. That's where out of plastic live. And then you have the Keys, 4 states. So you have the Keys, which are just a completely, I don't even know how to describe the Keys. The Keys are like the bar scene from the original Star Wars, right? They're just, it's a smattering of all sorts of people. But Florida's pretty big Second Amendment friendly. It doesn't take a lot to get your concealed carry permit in Florida, and you can generally speaking, you can carry pretty much whatever you want. You can even open carry. I believe last time I checked, you can open carry in Florida. So it's weird to see that, right? Because Texas, everybody thinks Texas, Wild West. Everybody walks around with 6-shooters on their hips, and that's not the case. That's Arizona. And it's crazy when you think about Texas. But just some really cool things about Texas. One, I got to tell everybody real quick, and I really want to hear Dave's story about how he became an admiral in the Texas Navy, and I want to hear about the Texas Navy because I've never heard of a state having their own Navy. I'm sorry, Texas is not a state. I apologize. It's a republic, right? Okay, so I'm out at Dave's house. I'm getting ready to leave. And Texas prides himself on a lot of things. And, it's like that. Yeah. Everybody remember A Few Good Men where Demi Moore's, warns Tom Cruise before they go to Cuba. And she's like, hey, be careful when you're down there because Marines are fanatical. And he's like, about what? He's like, about being Marines. Right. And so Texans are fanatical about being Texans. And, but one thing, and I was stationed in Texas at one point for a short time. So I love Texas. I love barbecue. I'm a fat kid. I love my food, period, but I love barbecue. And so, and I sent Dave a picture of it, and I talked to him about it. If anybody is ever in East Texas, you have to go to Lockhart, Texas. And Dave, you'll have to remind me of the name of the place that you told me to go to in Lockhart, Texas. It was the best barbecue I've ever had in my life. It was stupid good. They're not giving this shit away for free. Like I mean, it wasn't exactly cheap, but it was worth every penny. I would have paid double for it. But Lockhart, Texas, that was the best barbecue I've ever had in my life. Hands down amazing. I will compare every other barbecue I ever have to Lockhart, Texas, and I can't remember the place, but you told me it, and stopping at the Bucky's. What is that, Luke? The Bucky's? Yeah, dude. The holy shit, that was an experience. So I get back over to Dave.
Doors in the restrooms. You can. I mean, if you had to, you'd be okay.
It was
It's
the
that
cleanest bathroom.
and
Dude, it's cleaner than my bathroom in my
busy.
house.
I don't know how they do it, man. They must have elves that come out of the floor because those bathrooms are so busy. People coming in and out, in and out, in and out, and people are nasty. We all know that. And I asked my wife when she walked out the first time I went, I was like, "How was that bathroom?" Because everybody knows, man. This is gonna sound sexist, but Josh will tell you. Josh has 3 daughters. He'll tell you when it comes to restrooms, women are far nastier than men. I mean, they trash the restrooms, man. I don't know why. But I asked my wife, and she's like, "Oh no, it was spotless." And I'm looking at all these people, and you got some weird characters coming in and out of that bathroom in Texas, man. You can imagine there's some big folks in Texas, and man, they're clean. I don't know how they do it. Man.
So, Josh, when you went to Bucky's, did you get any snacks?
I did get some snacks. I got some Bucky's chocolate covered almonds. I got some Bucky's barbecue sunflower seeds. I got some uh I think they were tamales.
Hmm.
I I grabbed a number of things at Bucky's. I was not proud of myself. I grabbed some coffee, and I think I grabbed a Monster at Bucky's. I looked for a Gonzalez flag. I could not find a Gonzalez flag at Bucky's, but I did get a Gonzalez sticker at Bucky's, which I don't know if you can see it, but it's sitting up on my bookshelf right there on the top shelf. But yeah, I did manage to grab some snacks from Bucky's, but I was trying to get to Lockhart, and so I didn't spend too long at Bucky's. But dude, it was insane. And Luke's right. There was people, like, it was bizarre. It was truly bizarre. It looked like Bisbee, Arizona. The Bucky's I stopped at in between San Antonio and Austin, it looked like Bisbee, Arizona.
Yeah, so Josh went to the Bucky's in New Braunfels. So there's no telling what kind of folks are in that place, because that place is infested with weirdos. That's like destination number one for all the California transplants. But to answer your question, Josh, the barbecue joint I sent you to was Smitty's. All right, so there are there are three world famous, allegedly, certainly Texas famous barbecue places in Lockhart. It's Kreitz Market, Smitty's, and Black's. And depending on who you talk to and like what kind of barbecue kind of is your thing, people have their favorites. So if I remember right, Josh, you said you wanted brisket and sausage.
Yep.
So I recommended Smitty's for that.
Yeah, he likes a sausage. Lots of sausage.
You got a bunch of it, I think.
I'm sure he did.
Lots.
So like greasy. Oh, it's delicious. But Black's is really good. Christ Market's also very good. So you got to come back now and go to the other two.
Done. Easy. Done.
And Lockhart, I wouldn't say is East Texas. I would say it's more lower Central Texas.
Yeah. I was driving east and I drove through it. So
Does the Texas Navy have a base there in New Braunfels or what?
I don't know if they have one in New Braunfels, but they got one now in Rio Medina, Texas, where I live. That's where I have my headquarters. I actually was going to get an Admiral flag, just for kicks, get a blue flag with the 4 white stars. that shit is like 50 something bucks. Like I couldn't even get a cheap printed one.
Yeah,
It's
but you could get that sweet parking when you go on base next time. Hit the commissary, hit the PX. You can park in the 4-star slot, man. You take a trip over to up to Fort Hood or over to Fort Bliss, man. You be set up.
it,
Park right in that spot.
dude. $50 is cheap for an Admiral.
Oh, it doesn't come with pay. So I didn't get a boat. I don't even live near the water, and there's no pay. They didn't send me a flag.
So so give us a story on how one on the Texas Navy, and then give us a story of how you became an admiral in the Texas Navy.
All right, so kind of the short version. After Josh, poor bastard, took my position at Bragg, so that I could leave, sucker. I went back to the conventional army, and which was horrible, and I hated it. It was absolutely terrible. But one of the guys that worked with our office as the liaison to the FBI, he was a former uh, SMU guy, and he he like one day my boss asked me like a weird bunch of biographical information, which I had no idea what he was doing at the time, but he was feeding it to this FBI liaison to do a write up, basically to ask the governor to bestow this honorarium on me as a retirement kind of thing. And for whatever reason, Governor Abbott signed off on that. So I got a certificate. It says, hereby commissioned as an honorary admiral in the Texas Navy. And I think it's honorary because I wasn't born in Texas. Even though I grew up here, you know, it's a very stark distinction. You know, if you're not native Texan, you're kind of not really Texan, kind of not really. So even though I went to high school and college here and worked for the state as a state police and all that stuff, always be, you know, born not in Texas. So when Texas secedes, I may get a passport, I may not, I'm not sure. I have to play that one by ear.
You're gonna get a passport, but with a scarlet letter.
Yeah, have the clip on the edge of it.
Yeah, the yeah. So I forgot. Yeah. So I replaced Dave. Dave talked me into replacing him at Fortress Bragg, the epicenter of the universe. But then Dave let me come shoot animals in his yard, which I think makes us even. I don't know.
To be fair, I warned you. I absolutely warned you.
You did. You did warn me. So Dave, right? So before you hopped on, we were checking comms real quick and trying to work through some comms issues that we have because I have shitty internet that I pay a lot of money for. And, even Luke's his Eastern European internet provider is better than what I have here in the States. But we talked, obviously we were talking about the social media banning and the fascism actions of the people who keep saying they're anti-fascists, but yet they're, again, like Dan Crenshaw, their actions are different than their words. We were talking, but we also talked a little bit about the Capitol stuff, and I don't want to say the people who took it upon themselves to go into to go into the Capitol, whether they crawled over barricades, pushed barricades down, or the Capitol Police removed those barricades and let them pass through. Just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that, and kind of where do you think this is going to go over the next 4 years, as far as legislation, legislation on free speech, legislation amendment, kind of we kind of did a predictions episode, but I really want to get your take on that. If you wanna share that with us, just knowing that eventually somebody may try and put you on a train car.
Ooh, so there's a lot there.
There's a lot to unpack.
So I I don't know. It's so hard to tell. We used to kind of live under the illusion that everything was legit and kind of take stuff at face value. And now you have to question every single thing that you see and hear because there's no credible source for information anymore. And uh, what you see with your own eyes even kind of doesn't necessarily make sense. So do you say that the Capitol riot was staged? Maybe it was. Was it spontaneous? Maybe. Was it staged by Antifa infiltrators? Maybe. I don't know. I know that the FBI was amazingly fast in whipping out indictments for like 170 people, which the FBI is a whole nother thing. And I could talk at great length about the FBI. That's like my personal Dan Crenshaw to get on. But I don't know. It's really hard. You have basically the fourth branch of government dictating, what information we get. When you've got media and social media, big tech, kind of dictating terms for information release to the point where you have a consolidated coalition effort against Parler to shut that platform down. Not just shut it down, but take it off servers, deny the ability to generate revenue, or even have working telephone numbers. When you have that many organizations with that much of a consolidated effort against them in such a short time frame, it's pretty frightening. And so I don't know where that's going to go. In a way, though, I'm kind of actually happy about it because the faster this goes and the more crushing it is, I think the better it is for waking people up that go, hey, I don't want to get on this cattle car. I don't want to go to that re-education camp. Because that's the only good I see coming out of this. Maybe Trump leaves office and uses his financial standing to stand up his own web hosting services. Maybe that would be good. But I think right now, as it is, when you have a representative government that is supposed to be comprised of people who are voted in by the people, their constituents elect them, and then they do the constituents' bidding in our federal government. But if you don't have faith in the elections and the election process, then where does that leave us with a representative government? And how can you be certain that those people that were elected are going to fix that problem? And I think Florida did a fantastic job of assessing its election processes for the most part, except for that crazy lady down in Broward County, wherever that was, that they had to fire like twice. She kept coming back.
Yeah.
That lady is amazing. But I mean, Florida's the only state I think that's really taken elections seriously. The rest of us, even Texas, we're like, oh yeah, we'll have a drive-through drop box and just drop your ballot in there, and maybe somebody doesn't set it on fire. That'd be cool. Or we'll have drive-through voting. I mean, it's lunacy, and to drive it on for weeks at a time. It's just absolutely horrible. So, until we have some kind of assurance that the elections are actually going to be legit, we don't have necessarily good representation in the government, which is absolutely critical to fixing the media problem. Because I don't think there's any question that media is generally very biased, and it's controlled largely by our social media interactions, which now have been just absolutely, kicking us in the nuts as far as what content you can post and what's allowed and who's okay and who's not okay. And I think it's very telling that Parler was the #1 most downloaded app until it got kicked off AWS, and then the most popular app now is Signal for encrypted messaging. I mean, what does that tell us? So I'm hoping that there's a popular response, a large public response to this that will force things to kind of go back right. But I don't know if there will be. And if there isn't, and it gets worse, maybe that's better for our long-term health. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you talk about Parler because my answer to a lot of this has always been, another company and competition is going to come up, and that is one outside of the Section 230. A lot of these private companies are also failing at this because this is when somebody should be stepping up ready to make a gazillion bucks. Because I would tell you this, and not to get too nerdy about it, I don't know how much into torrenting you guys are in or whatever, but I was big into it probably 10 years ago or what have you. And when the Pirate Bay first came out, they went through all this stuff because you obviously had a lot of international law. When you look at U.S. law, when you look at Canadian law, and I think they ended up hosting their servers like out in Cyprus. But these were places, these were, I use the term companies, but it's very loose. But these were companies that were hopping servers all over the world till they finally found something that was going to host their product. So when you look at places like Parler, the fact that, and here's the other thing, I mean, Parler's trash. All right, we've said this for a while, and we're on it, and I like I like the principles behind it, but they've had a year to get their shit straight, and it just never got any better. I mean, even when it was up working right, the algorithms were garbage and this and that. So I'm a little disappointed. I think I'm liking Gab right now so far, but even with Gab, they're adding like 10,000 new users an hour. So they can't keep up with it. And I'm hoping here in the next couple weeks that it works itself out and that it's going to be very smooth. But I'm still waiting for, these commercial companies or these private companies to step up because there's millions of dollars out there, ready to be made. And I'm just like, hey, where are these folks at? Because when you look at, I mean, we've jumped into the mines thing, and that kind of goes, along the lines of cryptocurrency with how they do blockchain or what have you. But there really isn't anything out there that's really mainstream that's taking off. I mean, maybe MeWe, but I haven't been on there, nor do I know enough people on there to even make it worth my time. But Gab seems to be the way to go. But Dave, you did bring something up that was pretty interesting, and we actually had it in our notes for the last episode. And I want to throw it to Luke after I give my 20-minute monologue here. But you talked about, maybe it was staged. Maybe. What's interesting to me is this. So we knew that the protests or the Stop the Steal rally or whatever you want to call it, we knew that was going to happen on January 6th for weeks. I want to say I can even go back to like 20 December-ish time frame, and we knew that was going to happen, right? And I would say that when you look at historical gatherings of Trump rallies, you can probably assume that tens of thousands of people are going to be there. And the fact that this was also in the National Mall, you could probably even assume that, hey, we may actually get to like 100,000 people, 200,000 people, maybe even more. And I still don't know what the final numbers are, but it was definitely a lot of people. So if I'm responsible for the security of the Capitol, and even with like the National Guard and this and that, what makes me wonder is like, why wasn't that beefed up way before then? I mean, shouldn't that have already? I sat there and listened on the radio to the Secretary of the Army, the D.C. mayor, and a whole bunch of other mayors in the local communities talking about, we've got compacts with 9 different jurisdictions and 15 different jurisdictions and 4 different states and 32 cities and this and that. These are all like these agreements after the fact. It's like you knew 6 January was coming. Now, I'm not saying, black helicopter, this was planned, but I think they knew what was going to happen. And I think the media knew, hey, look, here's the deal. You get 50,000 people or whatever that number is together, you're going to have some bad apples. And you see that during whatever, I don't care what protest it is. It could be Save the Catholic Church protest. If you've got 50,000 people out there, you're going to have 10 folks that are going to burn something down or whatever. That's just what's going to happen. And the fact that it's done on a national stage gives even more media presence to it. And so to have that many people at the National Mall, I think that the Democrats kind of out a little bit, and I don't know if they were all in cahoots with each other. I think they all just probably had that same Borg mentality and that same thought process where, hey, guess what? There's some things that are going to go bad here. And let's just kind of let this thing play out, because I tell you, the National Guard definitely wasn't activated. That's a tool that was there. And now you're starting to see reports that half the shift of the Capitol Police were sent home at 10 o'clock, which President Trump didn't even come out to talk to, like 11? So you start to hear stuff like that. It's like, wow, man, you really set yourself up for failure. And then you look at the videos, and I'm not blaming the police at all right? I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying, when you read the narrative behind the headlines, that these Trump supporters storm the walls and this and that and whatever. And then you watch the video, and it's like, hey, they kind of let this barricade go and open it up for folks. And then you start seeing videos where the Capitol Police officers are taking selfies, with some of the folks that are inside, because from what I can tell, and I think there's 5 deaths now attributed to whatever. Okay, you had one lady that was shot, and then you had the one police officer that was like bludgeoned to death with a fire extinguisher. And I don't think I've heard details of the other 3. So we're not advocating obviously for violence and the loss of life, but when you look at the narrative that the left is putting out, I mean, it made it sound like there were 100,000 people with AR-15 storming the Capitol building. And I just don't, that's not what I saw. So, Luke, my question to you is, do you think that some of this was staged, a little planned, or do you think it was kind of like the left saying, hey, we see this wheels in motion here. We kind of know where this is going to go. So we're just going to kind of let it play itself out. What do you think?
I personally don't think it was staged. I think there might have been some aspects of planning to certain parts of what happened. I think there were, and this is all my personal opinion, and a lot of this is my normalcy bias, coupled with like Occam's razor, my view of the world and power structures and how they play. I do think that there were certain agitators there, probably on both sides. I think that a lot of people took advantage of the situation with respect to actually going into the Capitol and screwing around in there. I think you covered it real early in the episode, Roger, where there were some people in there who obviously had no idea what they were doing. There's a picture of this poor old lady. She's got to be in her late 60s, smiling and waving an American flag. And it's like, okay, this lady was not planning. She did not go to that rally planning on taking the U.S. Capitol. As far as the police are concerned, I mean, maybe there's a conspiracy going on there. I don't think so. I mean, if you look at Trump rallies in general, they're generally peaceful events. I think that when they were doing their threat assessment for that, they probably thought this isn't gonna happen. They read that wrong, and they weren't fully staffed like they were for the Black Lives Matter rally that was held earlier in the summer or late summer. And there was a lot of hate and a lot of hurt feelings about that. Posting pictures of this is what the Capitol looked like when the Black Lives Matter rally was going on. There were police, kitted up and everything. And well, that's because they did their threat assessment and they saw what had happened in recent history with some of these peaceful, quote unquote, peaceful protests, and they responded accordingly. They happen to be wrong in this case, and I have seen the videos. Some of these cops just let those people through. Now, I do also realize that it's a very complex situation. The Capitol is a big building. There are multiple ways in. I saw the one cop, he moved the barrier aside and waved the people aside. Who knows what was going on right there, but that was about 200, maybe not 200, maybe 100 meters away from the Capitol itself. So who knows what was going on there? I don't know. Do I think that they let them right in the door? I don't know. How many entrances did they come in? I just think that, like you said earlier, this was a temper tantrum. It really was. And I'm not going to comment any further on that. I do not think that violence was in any way called for, in any way. But if it makes any sense, I do think that the temper tantrum was called for, but not the violence, not at all. Once they were, if the cops waved them in, they should have gone in and sat in the rotunda just like they did in the at the Black Lives Matter rally, just like the Women's March did. They should have, peacefully protested civil disobedience and show your anger that way. But yeah, to answer your question, this is a really roundabout. No, I don't really think it was coordinated. I think it was taken advantage of, and especially in the aftermath, it has really been taken. They are not letting this this crisis go to waste at all. This will be Trump's legacy because that's how it'll be painted, in the media at least. For 75 million people, he probably lost a lot of support. And there's a difference between being a Trump supporter and a Trump defender. Just I'll point that out. But I think he lost. I don't think he's going to run again. I think this is going to be his legacy, and they are just going to drag him. The media is going to drag him through the mud. And I believe that, you guys are talking a lot about what's going to happen after January 20th. They're going to continue to drag him for a while, man. Everything's going to be his fault. And, that will eventually dry up, but that's good for at least another couple of months of coverage. I mean, Josh, am I wrong? I don't know.
No, 100%. I mean, it's like, it's like when we were in the Army and you PCS somewhere, you could always blame the last guy for at least the first 90 days, right? So it's like, why is this way? You're like, I don't know, man. I just got here. The last guy was, dude, what did he do? That guy was
Dave's
screwed
like,
up.
wait,
Man.
what?
Good thing. So you could always blame. You had about 60, 90 days where you could blame the last guy. And after that, man, it was like, yeah, it was on you.
I did that. I bragged for 4 years.
It was I don't know what, Dave. What? I just got here, man. I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing. No, again, I don't condone. I definitely don't condone the police officer, being killed, like, bludgeoned to death with a fire extinguisher. That's absolutely uncalled for. I hope they find the person or the people who did that, and I hope they spend the rest of their lives in jail. If DC had the death penalty, I hope they would be, if found guilty by a jury of their peers, I would hope that they would be put to death. But DC doesn't have the death penalty, so that's out of the question. Again, you talk about civil disobedience. There's been a lot of people who have been, I don't want to say marginalized, but you for the last, I wouldn't even say this is before Trump. It's not about Trump, right? This is about, people who have been, called terrorists, called insurgents, called Nazis, called, every name in the book, simply because we disagree with them. You look at the left, and the left are like, oh, we're anti-fascist. Well, you're the ones that are acting like fascists. So again, Dan Crenshaw, right? I hold you to that same standard. Your actions are speaking louder than your words, right? And so you had a lot of people who were very, were very frustrated, and they expressed that. I'm perfectly okay with going into the people's building and protesting the politicians, right? As you stated before, the guy in the Viking helmet with no shirt on was not there to overthrow the United States government and install a new one. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, right? I don't think they were there to, to assume control of the USG and the military and everything. I'm going to go with no on that, right? So people who are calling that a coup, it's a Princess Bride thing. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means, but nonetheless, it was super frustrating. You're definitely, this is going to be Trump's legacy. You're spot on with that, Luke. This is going to be Trump's legacy, and I didn't agree with everything that Trump did. There were things that he did that I absolutely 100% disagree with. The way he, came out and said that, we're leaving northern Syria, we're leaving the Kurds. I definitely didn't agree with that, having been there, with them and the Kurds, and the same as you. I mean, those, if we ever had an ally in that region, it was the Kurds. It was those Kurds, with us fighting and dying, fighting ISIS and dismantling the physical caliphate. There's other things I didn't agree with Trump with, but by and large, what I did like about Trump was the fact that he called Republicans and Democrats out. People don't realize, people forget that. People are like, oh, he was always, bucking up against, Pelosi and Schumer. He bucked up against everybody, and that's why the establishment did what they did to him, was because they're like, well, we can't have this guy in here, upsetting the apple cart, right? We got a good thing going. We don't have term limits, and we keep giving ourselves pay increases, and we keep, raising taxes. This is good. This is self-licking ice cream cone, and here comes this outsider in, and it's getting ready to expose and destroy all that. So we have to, we gotta prevent that. So it just, you're spot on. To kind of close this out, I really, I'm going back. We're pivoting, from that to back to Dave. So again, I'm a Floridian, right? But one thing that I've had a lot of different types of chili in my life. All right, a lot. I've had chili from Texas. I've had chili from Florida. I've had chili from even out west. Even in South America, it's not. They don't call it chili, but it's kind of like chili. Not the country, Luke. I see your head going there. South America does have chili, but not the chili I'm talking about. And so I was talking to Dave while I was out there, and Dave informed me, and I honestly I was a little aghast. I was taken aback. Dave, I'm going to throw it over to you, but I need you to explain, what is it with Texans and no beans in their chili? How is it chili if you don't have beans? I don't understand it. It's calamity. It's chaos. It's cats and dogs living together. I'm going to turn it over to you, give you the final thoughts here before we close it out and go to our YouTube freemium content. But what is it with beans and chili?
First of all, I can't believe I let you stay at my house for a week.
Me neither.
Right there. Not only did Josh stay at my house for a week, but he killed this beautiful buck on my property. And now he's going to talk about beans and chili. All right, so I'm going to break it down for you real easy. And Luke, back me up on this. You can put beans in whatever you want, but we call that stew. All right?
True. That's true.
What isn't chili without beans? Isn't that just like a sloppy Joe?
Not too far for me to drive.
Hey,
No,
you hop your ass in your boat and fucking tell them, onward ho, and fucking sail your ass up the Gila River up here.
No, in Texas, chili only has meat. I mean, it has other stuff in it, but not beans. It's just meat.
Kind of like a sloppy Joe.
So we have a Houston before we have a sloppy Joe cook-off. It's huge. I mean, it's a chili cook-off. It's enormous. It's the biggest thing you're going to see in your life. It's not sloppy Joe's though.
So what you're telling me is that Texas is the Mitt Romney's of chili. Or Mitt Romney's of
No, because we make a stand. We actually make a stand on this.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
We don't say, no, well, no.
There's a line we don't cross, okay? It's fine. It can be delicious. But if it's got beans, it's not chili. That's all there is to it. Words have meanings. All right? Words have meanings.
I love it. All right.
So what's going to happen is after this entire show, our listeners, the only thing they're going to come away with this, it's not the Section 230, it's not the protest, it's not the rights. Like, they don't put beans in their chili down in Texas. What the fuck's wrong with them?
Hey, if the 4 people that listen to this podcast only come away with that, the world is a better place.
Oh yeah, I love it. Hey, I'll have you know that we have 6 listeners, not 4.
Oh,
6. I got a couple of family members that listen, so I don't know if they count or not. So
I heard your dad was listening.
he is listening. So my dad listens. So my dad actually watches on YouTube. Vice listening. I downloaded some apps onto his phone and stuff like that, but he can't figure them out because, Dad, I love you, but technology, like it's not his thing, right? So it's like YouTube, Culper Canteen cup, and he watches. Plus, he wants to see if I'm drinking or not. So
I noticed, Josh, that since I found out your dad was listening, that despite the world collapsing around us, you didn't swear very much at all.
So funny you mentioned that. So our last, we recorded last week after everything that happened at the Capitol, and like Roger brought up at the very beginning, or Luke did. It was kind of raw, and I had I may or not have had a little bit of a meltdown, and said a lot of 4-letter words. So we didn't release that episode. Maybe we released some snippets of it, but yeah. Luke brought up the fact that I was not honoring thy father with my language. So I've definitely tried to tone it down a little bit, especially with my dad listening. Hey man, dude, I need to stay in the will. Dad, no, I've definitely tried to tone it down. I did go off that episode, man. A big thing about the police, people were denigrating the Capitol Police for not using force. And, it was like, dude, you just spent the last year denigrating the police for using force. What do you want them to do? It was just so I got pretty heated about that. But so Dave, I'll give it to you. Final thoughts before we close this out and go to our freemium content on YouTube. And if everybody listening, stay tuned because I'm going to ask Dave to tell us the story behind the Gonzalez flag and the story that he's got about there being a second cannon and what happened to that, because it's very interesting. It's the most Texan thing I've heard. So I'll give Dave his final thoughts, and then we're going to close it out.
So you want me to tell that story after we close it out for the premium? Okay.
Yeah, after we close it out, because we really need folks to watch the the freemium content. So your final thoughts on everything we discussed, if you got any, or about chili, whatever.
Well, I'm just very interested to see what happens because this is so much different than at any time in the last 30 years that I've paid attention to politics, right? And I remember I went to school at the University of Texas, which is super, super liberal, and it's huge. But that was so. I started college in '91, right? And that's the beginning of like PC culture taking root, and the Clintons came through campaigning. I actually went to see Hillary Clinton speak, which put my super liberal girlfriend to sleep. It was so boring. I saw Ross Perot speak, right? And Ross Perot was hilarious. And I want to share this with you because he said something that was the most prophetic thing I ever heard. He said, Hillary Clinton is like a crazy aunt that lives in your basement, but all the neighbors know she's there. Before the Bill Clinton presidency and before, she ever really had any kind of national prominence. But so since then, I've kind of been paying attention to politics, and this is the first time where it just looks like the entire bottom has dropped out, where there's There's no civility. There's no principle. There's no credibility. Congress spends all its time doing everything but legislating. And the laws that we do get, the 5,000 pages that you get 4 hours to read before you vote on, and that 98% of it's written by lobbyists who have some kind of stake in whatever bill it is. And, the media is so bent that the only way that the president of the United States can get a message out to the American people is through Twitter, which then bans him. I mean, what kind of a precedent, is that? Either we make a correction or, we double down on that and things get twice as bad. And, maybe that forces a correction, and maybe we just go down this path for God knows how long and, suffer accordingly.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion right now, I just kind of nothing I can do about anything. So I'm going to sit back and kind of see how it plays. And, if there's some place where I can interject and, maybe have an impact on the direction we go, I'll do it. But who knows?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an interesting ride for sure. So I'm going to close it out for everybody before we roll into our freemium content. Hey, big thanks to Carlton Zeus for the intro music. I don't know. Roger said he's working on his rap album, so I don't know, Carlton, how much longer you got to do our intro music?
It's rap core, not just rap core.
Before Roger has his rap core album out. So I don't know how, man. I don't know how much your days might be numbered. I don't know. We'll see what Roger puts out. See what he's doing out there in Apache Junction. So we appreciate everybody listening. And your YouTube freemium content starts now.
Awesome. All right. So talk to us about this second cannon.
I thought it might be more entertaining, though, if I told you the story about why Josh has not drank Jack Daniels in the last 22 years.
Oh, that'd be a good one, too.
So, as Josh mentioned earlier, we were at Bragg the first tour, in the late 90s, PV2, Josh Brown, and, me as a brand new buck sergeant. And we had this platoon leader who was a former staff sergeant, I think, before he went green to gold or OCS or whatever, he got his commission for. And he was a dick.
Oh, my God. The worst.
We all hated him. And I kind of understood him later, like a little bit more, the reason why he was the way he was. But he just like effing with people. He was just a straight dick. And so it was a great surprise to all of us when for Christmas he invited all of us from his platoon to his house for a Christmas party. And his wife, God bless her, super sweet. She made like little hors d'oeuvres, and they had this really nice like ice tub kind of thing with beers in it, and had all these kind of like assorted, like fancy kind of micro brew sort of beers. And nobody really wanted to be there. Like we all kind of collectively decided, like, all right, if we all go and we kind of stick together, we can make it through this. And so we go, and Lieutenant was actually being pretty nice, but he pulled kind of a slicky move, and he says, "Hey, I need you guys to help me out. I got these 3 bottles of booze that are in my cabinet, and I need to get rid of them." And so he pulls them out, and it's like creme de menthe and like cranberry liqueur or something, just awful, and then a bottle of Jack Daniels. And so it's like Josh and another junior guy and me. I said, "Look," I said, "you can put those other 2 bottles back. We ain't going to touch those things, but we'll help you out with the Jack Daniels." So grab the Jack Daniels and some shot glasses, and we're just going like full stupid, pouring shots. So like, all right, one for the airborne. All right, one for the 525. And we're just going back like morons. And Josh had enough sense to be like, all right, I'm done. And, this being Bragg in the 90s, I was like, no, you're not done.
No, you think you're done.
Look, man, I said, the back door is right there. All you got to do is hit that door and you're out in the backyard. So we get to drinking more. And Josh pauses. And you know the pause that I'm talking about. He's like, and we're like, there he goes. And then, bam, out the door he goes. And so we all go running out after him. We're like, oh, yeah. And we're just having a grand old hee-haw in time watching Josh about to get sick. And he tripods in the yard and stool coming off his lip and it's reaching all the way to the ground. We're like, yeah, it's coming, it's coming. And all of a sudden, just like projectile vomit straight down. And it goes into this little pile, straight like between his feet. Disgusting. Pile, I mean like, dome kind of shaped, like narrowing as it goes higher. God damn it, Josh. Like there was food in there that was like still like the little like little lunch meats rolled up, like still in a roll.
It was so bad.
I gotta F with this dude. So I reach down into Josh's vomit and I pull out a piece of meat that's still rolled up. And I'm like, well, you gotta learn to chew your goddamn food. And of course, Josh then goes into a spiral of more projectile vomiting. Ah. And so we're laughing and hee-hawing and backslapping and having this grand old time at Josh's expense. And then Ryan, the other dude, he's like, where's the elephant? Because he had suddenly disappeared. We're like, huh. And then around the corner we hear, LT was in the side yard puking. His wife actually yelled at my wife after that party because apparently he just like crashed out on the floor and was done for, I don't know, the next day.
Yeah. It's weird. He never invited us back to his house after that. I don't know why. I don't know how much time we have left. I know Roger's the timekeeper here. So I think we're at our 10 minutes. Right. No, yeah, we're right at, yeah. Dave, thank you for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks.
Yeah, no, dude. Glad we finally got you on. People get tired of hearing the three of us just kind of drone on. Luke felt better knowing that there was a another Texan in the room.
That's right.
Even though you went to UT, and he's he's guns up, Texas Tech, Texas A&M, whatever. What is it?
Texas Tech.
I thought it was UTEP. I thought it was UTEP.
Quick story of why I didn't go to UT. I was going to go to UT. And I went down there. I did community college for a year. And I went down there to visit. I've been accepted to UT and everything. I got so wasted in other things visiting friends there that I made the first adult decision of my life. And I was like, I can't go to this school. If I go to this school, terrible. I will not. I won't make it. So, yeah, I went Texas Tech. Yeah, but, man, holy shit.
Pretty girls and Shinerbach beer just about ruined me.
So, all right, everybody, we really appreciate you listening. Hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully you enjoyed Dave's story of picking through my vomit. That actually makes me kind of want to go vomit now. So, all right. Hey, thanks everybody. Until next time, keep your canteen cups full and keep them tightly secured. We'll see you.